Hey, yo, welcome back to Bibletheory Podcast. Actually, this is the after dinner party. I know it's not dinner in some places like in the West Coast, but it is dinner time somewhere, right?
Oh yeah.
So with that, I do have a special guest with me. It's Pastor Jacob. What's up, man? How you doing?
All right, man. How you doing? I appreciate you having me. I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And we're gonna be chilling. We're gonna be talking. If you guys are familiar with my show, you know how I do interviews and break that down. I'm not gonna do interview style, so we're just gonna have a conversation. We're just gonna share our thoughts, particularly here in this topic. I think we're just gonna chat about like philosophy and after reading one of my favorite books, it's called Apostate. I was struck by it, and I was like, you know what, it should be talked about just a little bit more. Hopefully, we get that. We do it right. Hopefully, we educate you guys and help you guys on your journey with the Lord and uncovering of theology and your journey in the Bible, right? So, but before we get to all that, why don't you go ahead and visit my website, thechicanonox.com, sign up for my free newsletter, my blog. Go ahead, read my blog, is for free as well. And go ahead and bookmark as that website is new things I want to be adding to that. So keep an eye out for that. And another thing that I have an announcement is I have something special that I want to share with y'all, everyone today. And that is my first missionary trip, short term missionary trip that I'll be going next year. I've never been on a missionary trip in general outside of the United States. And this is the first time I am going. I'm going with one doctor, Dr. Dominic Aquila, and another elder, John Leaf, and a couple other pastors and missionaries meeting up with Christian leaders in Egypt. And we're going to a remote area, a secret area. We're going to be meeting with other Christians in the country, teaching them, leading them. I'll be volunteering, of course. And with that, I'm going to need your help, and I'm going to need to raise funds for that. So any little bit helps. So go ahead and get your phone. And if you're watching this on a replay, that's totally fine. Go ahead on the comments below, type in replay gang. But get your phone out and just scan that QR code for me. I calculated the income that I need, to go, and I'm appreciated for the people who donated already. And it all I need is 150 people to donate $20. $20. That's like 400 stars on your Starbucks rewards. You know what I mean? That's how much it's so easy. You know what I mean? You and your friend going out to Starbucks, that's like $20 already. You know what I mean? So all I need is $20 from 150 people out there. Just send me the money, and I will go ahead and use it for the ministry to go out there to help me for travel, for hotel, and for bag check. And then I need to get a new passport, so I need to renew my passport. So that's right there, $90 right there. So all of it is gonna go towards this trip. It's next year, so I'm getting a head start, trying to collect the income that I need to go to further the kingdom of God, to encourage them. And quite frankly, I think I'm going to be more encouraged than anybody else on this trip. So, and I'll keep you updated. I'll do a live video from Egypt. I'll probably even do a live podcast with these pastors in Egypt. So I'll go ahead and do all of that if I go. And I pray that I go because the door is open to me. So go ahead and support me and scan that code and send me to Egypt. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about something cool. But before we do that, Pastor Jake, why don't you introduce yourself? Let people know who you are and what you do.
All right. I am Jacob Frett. I'm a pastor from Windsor, North Carolina. My church, for now, is in Robertsonville, North Carolina. We rent out a community building, and we have services there. And so it's a small congregation, about 30, 40 on a good Sunday. But anyway, that's what I've been doing the past 3 years. I've been working as an EMT for the last 13 years, and I've just stopped working actually in June because I've developed, after COVID, I ended up developing chronic kidney disease. So I'm in end-stage renal disease. So then I do dialysis and all of that stuff. So now I'm not working, but God is still holding on to me, still taking care of me, still keeping me and my family. And so I spend now when I feel well enough, I spend a lot of my time teaching and preaching on videos and, obviously still pastoring the church. So that's what I do. I have a YouTube channel called The Wholehearted Christian. And so that's where you'll find me at most of the time, or on Facebook. So yeah, that's my story.
Word, man. And tell us a little bit more about, your journey to become a pastor. Why did you become a pastor? Your journey about church planning. How is that going? What denomination you're trying to plant the church with, if any. What are your convictions about, church plant in general? Just real quick.
Okay. So my journey to becoming a preacher was a little awkward. It started out of a severe church hurt. That was how it started. It was a severe church hurt. My dad was a pastor for uh, 21 plus years. And toward the end of his tenure, the last 5 years of his tenure, he became paralyzed, and the church kind of mishandled him. They didn't treat him well. And so basically he ended up having like a stroke or something, stroke or a heart attack. I believe it was a stroke because he lost oxygen to the brain. So I think that was a stroke, yeah. So he had a stroke and lost oxygen to his brain, and he didn't die. So he was just not capable of performing his duties. And he gave his life to that church, and the church swiftly moved him right out of the way. And they didn't do it graciously. They didn't do it, in a decent manner. So obviously it left all of us who were in that church, it left us really hurt. So then we ended up leaving the church. So that's pretty much what my church is. We left, and for a while, for 5 years, we were just split up and gone wherever church would allow us to come in. And in that time, because I was just playing drums for my dad, but I wasn't really I wouldn't consider myself saved. I wasn't really knowledgeable of the scriptures. My dad was a very good teacher. I just wasn't listening. And so in this 5 years, that was 2015, my dad ended up dying. And then when he died, it was like we got nobody else. Like we got nothing else. So then we're just going everywhere. And everywhere I went, I just wasn't being fed like I knew I should be fed. I wasn't getting it. So then I was just searching for more and more and more, and I wasn't finding it. And so then that caused me to start digging into the scriptures. And then I'll have a little bit more when we start talking about some of these people on this list. I'll get into some things where that even furthered my journey with becoming a pastor. But long story short, all of those 5 years that my dad was gone between 2015 and 2020, somewhere in there, God said, "You're the pastor. You're the pastor." So then, and that came not like a voice or nothing like that, but that came in like one night. I woke up from a dream, and I woke my wife up in the middle of the night. I said, "Hey, I just had a dream. We was all back to church. We was all together. All of us was together. We were back in church." And she was like, "No, maybe it's a YouTube ministry. Start a YouTube ministry." So I did, but I still felt like YouTube wasn't it. And so I just kept going, kept learning, kept studying. Then that's when God providentially brought me into the Reformed stuff. I started that because I'd never heard about a John MacArthur. I'd never heard of a R.C. Sproul. I'd never heard of a Vodi Bakum, H.B. Charles, Paul Watson. Never heard of these guys. Never knew they existed until this time. And then I'm starting to read, and I'm picking up these books. And then it starts boom, 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 boom. And then it starts going off, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm saved. It was like, and then I could not stop loving Jesus. I could not put my Bible down. And even when I tried to, as advice I've learned from H.B. Charles, he said, if you cannot preach, don't preach. If you can walk away from preaching, walk away. And I've done everything in my power to walk away from preaching. And every time I try to walk away, it's just like God got a rope around me and just pulled me right back in. And so I stopped running. A preacher named Mark Andrew Warren uh, uh, just took hold of me and said, "Hey, you got the word in you. You want to preach?" I said, "Yes, I want to preach." He said, "Have you ever thought about being a pastor?" And I said, no, I just want to preach. If anybody just lets me preach, that'd be good enough for me." And he was like, "You need to think about being a pastor." And lo and behold, uh, October of 2020, he ordained me right there at his church in Ahoskie, North Carolina. And I've been preaching ever since. We literally started our first service the very next Sunday from there. And we just been going.
He just threw you out there. He's like, "You can swim now in the ocean."
Yeah,
Sink or swim, boy.
it was just like that.
Wow, man. All right. So I brought you on because we're just gonna chat, okay, and share our
Yes, sir.
thoughts. This is not a I love philosophy, by the way. I do love theology and philosophy. They're two different segments of study, by the way. And theology, I would say, is a better study than philosophy, but you cannot really know theology unless you study philosophy as well, because philosophy is theology without God. And sometimes there's a whole lot without God. And you're like, man, it's kind of like theology, but without God. So we're gonna be talking about that the best way we can, right? And
Yes, sir.
I back in the day, I read this one book called Apostate by Kevin Swanson. It's not that, it's actually a page turner. It's really good. Came out in 2013, I think, 2012. And I read it a long time ago. And it's about all these philosophers, right? And
Mhm.
how they came from Christian background and how they became envious of Jesus and hateful of Jesus. And they basically just walked away from the faith and they turned their powers and their gifts, because you have to acknowledge when you study these philosophers, it's like, man, these guys are smart. Like
Yeah.
these
Oh, yeah.
guys are legit, brilliant, smart. Like I cannot take away, I cannot take that away from them.
Right.
Like I wouldn't agree with them philosophically. I'm against them. What they're doing is bad, evil, but there's no taking away their talent of writing, thinking, their abilities, right? It's kind of like LeBron James. Like, yeah, he could jump and dunk. Like, yeah, he could do it better than me, and that's for sure. He's gifted. That doesn't mean I think he's the best or like I'm gonna endorse him, or
Right. Right.
there's other players I think it'll be better. But anyways, just to draw that analogy for you. But we're gonna be talking about that, you know what I mean? Philosophy today. We're gonna be trying to rank them, give them rankings if we can. And but what are your thoughts, real quick, about philosophy and theology before we even get into it?
I agree with you. I believe that philosophy is not, philosophy is not, it's, we understand, we're clear that theology is the main thing. But philosophy is right there under it. Like it's necessary because what school of thought do we, like everybody, whether they admit to it or not, everybody has a philosophy. Everybody has a way of believing. Everybody has a system, a school of thought that they adhere to. Again, aside from theologically, your family structure, the way your family was raised, your parents' ideals, your grandparents' ideals, the things that were instilled into you are the culture of your philosophy in your home. We do things this way in my house. You do things that way in your house. Now, you might say, hey, this thing, I don't really care for that. Or I might say, I don't really care for that. But these are things that we do, things that we know, things that we live every day. So philosophy is definitely necessary. And just like you said, we have to admit that there are some people who are ungodly that had a school of philosophy that you can look at it and say, I see where you were going with that, but then you went way out here somewhere. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you don't have God to where when your philosophy and humanity becomes flawed, that God says, come on back here, because God says, my holy wisdom, my wisdom is greater than your wisdom. So then when we get out of line, God brings us back. That, like, when you look at the Proverbs and you look at the different things that David would say in the Psalms, David was getting out these things that he was feeling. I'm feeling this way. And he taught these different things to Solomon. Hey, I made all of these mistakes because the philosophy that I had was, hey, do this, do that. But then I see where it got me in trouble. And so then you see the Proverbs where he taught that to David. I mean, excuse me, where David taught that to Solomon to say, hey, I messed up in this place, this place, this place. My
Yeah.
school of thought, my way got me here. But don't do it my way,
Yeah.
do it God's way. So, yeah.
Bringing up Solomon, I would say probably the wisest man outside of Jesus.
Hmm.
Like, if you had to like put Solomon up
Hmm.
and against the best philosophers of all time, Solomon would probably take him home.
Yeah. Yeah. I
He
believe
would
God
wrap
made
them up.
sure that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he would destroy all them. Like, if I was a betting man, I'll put 100 on Solomon.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
then you know what? If I may, just for a second, when you speak about Solomon, when we because there are things, because people will say, well, and this just me. People will say, okay, well, you know, you got your Gandhis, and they said this, and you got your the names are escaping me, but you got this one, and this one said this, and this, and there's a lot of different things. Like, you can learn wise sayings, you can learn wise wisdom from men from all over the world who did not know Jesus Christ. You can, right? But then when I look at the Proverbs, when I look at uh, uh, Solomon's writings and Solomon's stuff, when I look at that, it's like, what did any one of these people say better than Solomon said it? None of them. Either they're saying the exact same thing, or just, or something that's it just. But Solomon, what I'm saying is, Solomon, like, we can find what we need in that Bible. Like, that Bible has every single thing we need, because ain't no one of these people, like you just said, Solomon would beat them all. So then why do I need to listen to any one of them but Solomon? I don't need to go draft you or bring you in. Now, I'm not saying that, again, my dad, who I love dearly, he ain't in the Bible. He didn't write any book in the Bible. So I'm not saying that no man couldn't teach me nothing. So that ain't what I'm saying. Or that you couldn't learn something from people. What I'm saying is, we feel these things because these are part of our philosophy. We feel these things that come from here and there and everywhere. And then when we bring them in, before we apply them to ourselves as foolproof truth, that was good. I just made it up, by the way. Before we apply them to ourselves as foolproof truth, we say, okay, how does this compare to the Word of God? And if it's good, then we say, okay, I'll keep it. And if it ain't good, we say, you keep that. So that's
I
what
like
I
that.
think.
No, absolutely. So, with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get into it. I did find a little chart to introduce um, philosophy to those who are watching. Maybe you don't have the background. Maybe you never went to college. I never took a philosophy class or anything like that. No worries. We're gonna go ahead and break it down for you and try to explain it to you. So let me go ahead and share this little chart I found. And where is it? Right here. All right, you guys see that right there? All right, so the first place, and this is just a quick little introduction, okay? Before we get into our list. For those watching, this is just an introduction to philosophy, like a timeline to get you a little up to date on where philosophies have gone. Because if you study philosophy, one of the things you will notice is that there's progressions of thought. There, a philosopher stands on top of another philosopher, and he carries the baton further, right? And then another philosopher comes at a different age, and he carries that baton even further. So one of the biggest philosophers you have to start off with in the world would have to be Socrates. Now he lived anywhere between 470 to 399 BC. He basically created the fundamental foundation of Western philosophy. He basically just laid the basic thought. Obviously, he's not a Christian. Uh, there's some theologians out there that believe, that theorize that maybe Socrates and all the Greek philosophers perhaps studied Moses, perhaps studied and read the Torah because they had access to books that no doubt they read Eastern, Near East Jewish philosophers, and they considered Moses a philosopher. So maybe they get a lot of their stuff from Moses and the Torah. And I don't know if that's true or not. But I personally, it doesn't sound too off for me. But anyway, Socrates is is credited to be the fundamental founders of Western philosophy. He's like one of the head honchos for Stoicism, and for methodologies behind thinking. He basically said, hey, behind thinking, there should be a method behind the thinking. He basically said if something is true, we should evaluate it to prove that it is true. Obviously, we could all agree with that. He considered ignorance could be parallel to intelligence. Basically, it's kind of like what Elon Musk said. Just because you have a bachelor's degree doesn't mean you're smart.
Right. Yeah.
I think Elon Musk stole that from Socrates, because that's basically what Socrates is saying. It's like, hey, just because you read a few books and you're smart doesn't mean you're intelligent. Like, you could be an idiot. A person, he says, a person's deeds was composed of his or her intelligence or ignorance. And that right there could be true depending on the situation. Like, if you're doing something based on ignorance because you didn't know, or you're doing something because you knew it, right? Like robbing a bank, you knew you were stealing, right? um so anyway, so philosophy, you do have to consider Socrates as like one of the founders of ethic. What's called one of the ethic branches of philosophies, which studies like right and wrong and stuff like that. If you're out there and you're studying criminal justice, maybe to be a police officer or some kind of probation officer, and you're taking like criminal justice, you're going to have to read a little bit of Socrates, in that course. Next, you look at Plato. Plato is one of the main honchos that came after Socrates between 427 BC, 347 BC. Probably one of the most well-known philosophers of all time. Like, Plato is just a fancy name. It's a cool name. It rolls off your tongue really, really well. Like Plato. You know what I mean? So like, he's one of the best known philosophers of all time. Even people who never read a book, they heard the word Plato. And he wrote many books. And he's one of the dudes that basically took what Socrates did, right, and brought it to like mainstream popularity, and including theories of form. Theorizing there's got to be a form to the universe because everything in the world has a form. So he, got theorizing for that, and he founded one of the first academies in Athens. And also he blended he wrote a book on politics called, guess what? Politics. If you read it, he basically gives the basic foundations for political theory that we still use today. So he wrote a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. So that guy was a big writer for sure. And then after he died, Aristotle took up the mantle. Man, probably one of the most well-known philosophers of all time outside of Plato. He was a student and prodigy of Plato, and he also trained Alexander the Great. I don't know if y'all know that, but he trained him. And then he also rejected the theory of form. So he didn't accept everything that Plato taught him. But he did, sometimes students don't accept everything from their teachers, right? So like he had more of an like scientifical mind. Like, hey, I want to I want to test it for myself. I want to feel it for myself, and I want to study it and verify it for myself. So, and that's called empirical science, basically. Like he wants to verify it.
Right.
He had all kinds of stuff. I mean, he studied all kinds of like logic. He was more of a logical. That's why he was like one of the main founders of logic theory and reasoning. So if someone was like, "Hey, I don't believe it until I see it," it probably would be this guy. After he died, remember, we're jumping through history here, right, Pastor Jay? So these are the most brilliant people that picked up the mantle in the world when it comes to philosophy. And I know there's probably like 20 other people we can mention, right?
Mm.
Like
Yes, sir.
between Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, there's like 1,000 years, 1,300 years, right? So like there's brilliant people that lived in between that time, but like these are the most notable, right? So like Thomas Aquinas comes next in the realm of philosophy. Obviously he's a Roman Catholic, really brilliant thinker. If you read his stuff, it's pretty neat. Not all of it is neat, but a lot of it is. It says one of the most important medieval philosophers. He wrote one of the biggest theological books called Summa Theologica. Explored ethics and theology. He wanted to find the best philosophy of secular philosophy and the best Christian theology and put them together and said this is the best of the best. To explain, he found ways to explain the existence of God that we still use today.
Oh, yeah.
Um, then after he died, the next one to take up the mantle would be Rene Descartes. Later on, post Reformation history here, he comes after. He basically is the father of modern philosophy. There's a disconnection between medieval philosophy at this point and Greek philosophy, and he's like, nah, this got to be something better. So he believed in conscience and self preservation, of course, and like self thought and self examination and stuff like that. And he said, doubt everything. So he created the doubt method because the doubt would lead to truth, blah blah blah. So that's that. There's much more that could be said on these guys, I'm sure. Machiavelli, after that dude, 1469 to 1527. This dude is a political giant. He's like the prototype of what every leader wants to be after they read his book, The Prince, which argues that a good prince would not follow traditional ethical rulings, meaning a king doesn't have to be good all the time. He needs to be respected and feared, and that's what he proposed. Basically, like a kind of like a tyrant.
Okay.
After he died, David Hume, metaphysical dude and epistemology, and then like the father of empiricism science. So this gave rise to future thinkers like Charles Darwin, which we'll later on talk about. And then when he died, the next dude that came up and took on the mantle of the world would be John Stuart Mill, 1806 to 1873. He focused on logic and political theory, mostly political theory, but he was a Unitarian, which denied the Trinity. And also, like, he was an economist, so he was a good mathematician. But he was a mathematician who denied the Trinity, so that influenced everything, right? Once you
Right.
deny the Trinity, like, there's no going back. And so that developed a whole set of ethics of Unitarianism, utilitarianism. My bad. But he also denied the Trinity, uh, and the principles of, he had all kinds of stuff. And then once he died, Immanuel Kant. So all these guys are not like progressions, like come after each other, but like I'm talking about like geniuses
Right.
of philosophy, right? So Immanuel Kant, and then after him, Friedrich Nietzsche, probably one of the most popular men in the modern era. Um, and then what you call it? And then Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of the most popular dudes that probably ever lived outside of George Washington in our time. So with that being said, there's that. That's a little introduction for y'all out there. Pastor Jay, what are your thoughts?
man, when you hit Thomas Aquinas, I wanted to jump out my chair. I said, man, golly, that joker helped me. He certainly did help me, because there are man, it's just in my limited study, very limited study. Man, when I came across Thomas Aquinas and his explanation of God, and it's like, the whole prime mover thing, and I'm like, oh, and it was so helpful to me, because I know what I believe, and see, and that is what I do on my channel. I try to take what I believe and what I understand, and take all of those big words, those big things, all of these big knowledge, and just break it down and feed it like Skittles. You know what I'm saying, to little kids. So that way,
Yeah.
but I break it down so people can understand it, because I know me, like, when I first started reading Thomas Aquinas, I'm like, what? But then as I started thinking it through, I'm like, Lord, and I promise you, all of it went with prayer. Like, I'm like, Lord, I read what he said. I don't get what he said. Same thing with all of my theology. Like I said before, John MacArthur and all these guys, I hear you, but it's not clicking here.
Yeah.
That's when I knew I was saved. And then I'm like, Lord, okay, with Thomas Aquinas, like, Lord, explain to me this prime mover. Explain this to me. And then as I asked God to explain it to me, and I kept reading, then it was like, oh, it makes so much sense. And then it's like, this necessitates this, and this necessitates that. And I would have never been able to explain that to anybody. But it's like now, it's like, man, thank God for some of these guys, because a lot of the stuff that they have come up with, especially in the way of theology, has been very, 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 very useful. Very useful.
No doubt. Thomas Aquinas have contributed much. A lot of people will say good, and a lot of people say, well, half good.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the more I find out about them, the more I'll be like, you know what? I think everybody has contributed good and half good. He has written a lot, and if you've read every single thing he wrote, I think that would be a statistic of people who actually did, because he wrote a ton, man. And obviously, it was 800 years ago. In his book, Apostate, has a whole chapter on it, and he was like one of the first ones that created a division of his a division in knowledge, because he wanted to create a whole system of knowledge for Christians, because the Greeks and secular people, scholars, they had their system of knowledge divided for them. Like, okay, here's Greek, here's ethical philosophy, here's political theory. Like, they had everything systematized, systematically. And the Christians, this is before the Reformation, okay? This is like 1200s, right? So like the Christians were like, we really don't have systematics. We really don't have it, all broken down like that. We have Augustine, a little bit did that for us. We have Tertullian, a little bit, but not like formally.
Right.
So what he did was like, okay, we need to have a formal system of thought, a theory of knowledge from a Christian worldview. And that's what his journey was, to develop that. So he dedicated his entire life to develop a theory of knowledge. And one of the successes that he has done was accomplishing that by dividing up knowledge in two sections. One is called sacred knowledge, and the other is called philosophical knowledge, which is secular knowledge. And he divided it up into two. And he's like, this is secular knowledge, a knowledge where humans can reach if they study and read and apply themselves.
Right.
And they could attain a certain form of knowledge and reach a level that is pretty high. Maybe not a Plato, but they could reach pretty high levels, right? And like he would consider Plato and Aristotle and all those guys to like they were like the apex predators of that system of human knowledge as humans. Like,
okay,
like he saw them as that's as smart as humans can get.
Okay.
So he's like, Plato, that's as smart you could get.
That's the pinnacle.
Yeah. And then, so he's like, but that's also as close to God as you could get with your mind without Jesus. So he's like, without Jesus, you could only get as smart as Plato and still be lost and still be without Jesus in the world. But you could be brilliant and never get to God. But you could get really close, or as close to God as Plato, which is very far. And then he was like, okay, for the Christians, you have like Augustine and Tertullian, people that came before him, right? Because this is like 300-400 years before Calvin. So he was like, there was no Calvin, there was no Luther, this is before that. So, and then, so he was like, you could probably get as smart as Augustine, but which one is better, right? You have the knowledge of God, or you have the sacred knowledge. And he would say, actually, the knowledge of God is best, is the greatest of all time, is the GOAT.
Right.
But the knowledge of humans and secular knowledge is also good.
Right.
There's also good in it. So that's how he would approach it. He divided, knowledge like that in history. But a lot of theologians will come back and say, yeah, that's true. But he left the banana peel in history. And later on, people slept on it.
Oh, yeah.
And they will say, well, what is that? Well, what's the banana peel? Well, the banana peel is that the sacred knowledge is kind of too independent now. Like, okay, that's like pretend there's two different kingdoms, right? The kingdom of secular knowledge and the kingdom of, biblical knowledge. And they're forever divided, because that's what he did, and now the secular knowledge is like, well, it's kind of optional, right? To like really believe, God in that sense, then I guess we could just stay here and build up knowledge and stay over here.
Right.
Without God, I guess, So and later on, people slip on that knowledge, and now secular knowledge is swallowing up biblical knowledge in the public area, in society, in the world, so much so that biblical knowledge is like, yeah, that's a joke,
Yeah.
I don't know. What other thoughts are your thoughts on Thomas Aquinas?
I mean, just to piggyback on what you were saying, like we see a lot of that now. That the secular philosophies, the secular thinking, the secular school of thought has not just taken over in the world, it's taken over a lot in the church. To where there are certain things we do in the church, and if someone would question, why are we doing this thing? Or if we go back to this chapter, or we go to this book, this chapter, this verse, we shouldn't be doing this thing. And well, the whole secret sensitive movement, all of that comes out of a philosophy of what will draw these people, what will, and again, where Thomas Aquinas, which, when we look back, we can say we see what he was trying to do. But then, like you said, there are some theologians that said, hey, you left the banana peel. And I can see that too, because you give the devil an inch. What he gonna do? He gonna take the whole mile and some more. Like the Bible tells us this. And going back to Proverbs, even something you were saying about when Thomas Aquinas separated the schools of thought, the sacred knowledge and the secular knowledge, and he separated those two things. When the Bible tells us, in all you're getting, get understanding. You know what I'm saying? Like the Bible tells us, that we take these things. We can take something. We can hear what people are saying. And if it's good, utilize it. Use it to your strength. If it's not good, get rid of it. Don't play with it. Don't pull fire into your bosom and get burned. Put it out. But now we've let it we've let it go so far, like I said, even in the church, that we've allowed not only for secular thought and for secular views and secular understanding to rival that of sacred knowledge, biblical knowledge, but now we've allowed it to supersede in some cases. In some cases, where I was just discussing something with some people the other day, and their thing was, "Hey, don't bring the Bible into this." And I said, "Oh, now first of all, you gotta remember you're talking to a Christian first and foremost. Before I'm anything, I'm a Christian. So then my worldview, my philosophy, my theology, my understanding, my worldview, the way I see life, the way I see anything, comes with this lens of Jesus Christ over my face."
But they don't like that because they want to separate it.
Yeah, and but no, I'm trying to think of that scripture on the spot. I'm sorry, but it's the scripture that says that we're in the world, but we're not of the world. Like God, Jesus prayed. He said, "Don't take them out of the world. Just keep them from the evil one." So Jesus, his philosophy for us was not to escape, not to run away, not to be hidden from the challenges of this life or the challenges of the secular thought or any of this stuff. Not to be hidden from it, not to run away from it. But he says that I'm greater than all these things, because greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. Whatever I've given you, the wisdom that I've given you trumps everything they got.
Yeah, I think Thomas Aquinas would be like, yes, that's exactly what motivated me to claim philosophy for Jesus, because he would say philosophy doesn't exist outside the sovereignty of God. He would say whatever is good, whatever is knowledgeable, whatever is lovely, think of these things. That's what Paul said. So a lot of things that Aristotle and Plato and all them, they were trying to think, not all of it. There's a bunch of stuff that's like, let's just get rid of it. But he's like, Thomas Aquinas would be like, there was a lot of stuff in there still that are lovely, noble, good, that Christianity in general has benefited from.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But we handle it better than the Romans, because the Romans invaded the Greeks and they inherited Plato, they inherited Aristotle, and they did a little with it, but he would say they failed. Christianity inherited the Romans and the Greeks, and we did better with that. We did better with those institutions. So he's like, let's go back and let's dig the good. Let's actually investigate the lovely, the noble things, to think about these things, because if it's good, if it's noble, and it's all these things, like Paul the Apostle said, where does it come from? Does it come from man, or does it come from God? Like, who gave Plato those really good thoughts, right? Is it really God, or is it really Plato? So Thomas Aquinas would be like, everything good that we could conceive as a good thought does not originate from us, because we are inherently evil beings. We are depraved, born in original sin. So he was like, we cannot really think good apart from God. Even if you're a pagan secular and think of a couple good things, that itself is good things coming from God. So he's like, that we need to go over there and claim it and bring it back into the Christian worldview where goodness belongs.
Right.
So that's what he was trying to do. Obviously, let me read this quote about the banana peel. It says, the secular universities were now free to build their systems of knowledge entirely without the divine revelation of scripture. So universities were created a long time ago, but really got their start right after Thomas Aquinas in the 12th century, in the medieval times. And they really got their start around that time because Thomas Aquinas really created a whole system of thought for Christians to now educate the world, right? To train them to be doctors, nurses, lawyers, whatever.
Right.
And so universities were like, oh, so we could train people to be a nurse, to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, and we don't have to tell them about God. We could just tell them, hey, this is how you do surgery.
Right.
There you go. And it's like, it sucked the worldview of God out of that surgery. So now the doctor is like, all I need to know is how to do surgery, and that's it. And what theologians are bothered by Thomas Aquinas is that he allowed for those secular universities, because um Oxford in England, Cambridge, and all those universities that was born right after all this, they really did that. They were like, okay, well, everything about God is over there, and everything about secular is over here, and we don't need to necessarily teach the doctors that they need to pray and trust in the Lord to do
Right.
surgery. They just need to do the surgery and get it over with. So that line of thinking kind of, you know, grew and grew and grew into the modern day, like you had said, is even growing inside the church. And I don't think Thomas Aquinas would have thought about that. I don't think he was like, like
Yeah.
I wanna get this in the church and I want to destroy it. Blah, blah. I don't. I think that's unfair. I don't like. He's dead, man. Like
Yeah.
more than 1,000 years. Okay, so like let him rest in peace. There's no way for him to know the future. How could he? Right?
But I think about that though. When we think about, because mind you, like you said in the beginning, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, seeing further than they saw. Their vision, their view was limited, and we stand on their shoulders and we see further than them, and then we tell them, "Hey, idiot, why you couldn't see that?" You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
you're on my shoulders. You're supposed to see further than me. I was just helping you to get to this stage. So that's kind of like going back and spitting on the foundations when the foundations were built for you to build upon. It wasn't built for you to stay there. It was built for you to recognize, like the Bible says that we're built off of these foundations, the prophets and the apostles, and yeah, we're built off of this foundation. Okay, so then we stand on their shoulders. And mind you, now we stay in the lines of the word. We don't go past that. We don't go above or beyond. We stay in the word. But there are things that we see and we got to deal with in our school of thought and our the philosophies of this day and age, and the things that we see and the things that we got to deal with. And God gives us wisdom for that. He gives us everything, and is really, I think, golly, I've been using this word a lot for the past 2 weeks. I think it's really disingenuous for many of us to look back on Thomas Aquinas or different ones at different times who were the only reason we understand some of the things we understand is because we read these guys, and they were reading other guys who they crafted their understanding from and built off of that. Why do we get to pick this stuff up and say, hey, we were able to read thousands of years of writings from here to there, and so now we can take all the good from all the good that they said and put away all the bad, and now we got all the good stuff. We say you guys are idiots. No, that don't make sense.
There's definitely a slippery slope for in theology and philosophy. Like, yes, like we there is a danger, still to be, said, is that there is stony grounds and thorns and seeds, in these men's hearts that later on you would see, like maybe they were never Christians, because
Right.
most of these philosophers in history, and especially in late history, they were Christians. They inherited Christian gospels, raised in Christian families, heard went to church, heard the catechisms, sang the hymns. A lot of them did. You know what I mean? So a lot of them, some of them even sat under really sound biblical preaching. Is that when they went to school, learn all these things, came up with their own way, they abandoned the faith, and some of them even went against the faith.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes,
I
sir.
love how this book lists the background of these people. And there's a fancy word for it. It's called apostasy.
Mm-hmm.
When you
Yeah.
walk away from the faith and then turn your guns, spiritually speaking, to the faith. So that's what these men did. For example, Rene Descartes, Roman Catholic; John Locke, Puritan Protestant; Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Calvinist Protestant; Jeremy Bentham, Anglican Protestant; Ralph Emerson, Congregationalist Protestant; Charles Darwin, Anglican Protestant; Friedrich Nietzsche, Lutheran Protestant; Karl Marx, Lutheran Protestant; John Dewey, Congregationalist Protestant; John Paul Stewart, Roman Catholic and Protestant; Nathaniel Hawthorne, Congregationalist Protestant; Mark Twain, Presbyterian Protestant; Ernest Hemingway, Baptist Protestant. So, like, when you study these guys, a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's a bunch of humanists." Well, yeah, they're humanist philosophers,
Right.
and they wrote a lot of things against God, and a lot of them denied the Trinity. A lot of them denied Christian theology, Christian historical creeds, like the Nicene Creed. A lot of them just bastardized God and the existence of God and religion and all these things. All you have to do is do a Google search on these men, and you will find out like a lot of these guys hate God. Like, what's
Right.
going on with them, right? But isn't it interesting that all of these guys come from Christian Protestant background?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, man? I was blown away.
Man, you know what? I think as Solomon would say, nothing new under the sun. Because the same thing that has been going on is going on now. I was talking to a brother, and he grew up in the same church that I did. Knew the same parents. Like I said, my family has grew up in the church. And like now, when I talk to this brother, he hates Christianity. He hates it. Can't stand it. Grew up with it. Sang the songs, sing very well. Sang the songs in the choir, wherever. Beautiful voice. Brilliant mind. Now he hates. I would dare say that he hates God because he believes that God is in him. And this philosophy, this school of thought, where God is in you and you are divine in and of yourself, because now, mind you, here's the thing. He would deny biblical Christianity. He would deny, disregard, dispose of biblical Christianity, but then he still picks and takes some things from it. And it's like, that don't even make sense. How can you disregard Christianity and say, but we're made in the image of God? Who told you that? How did you know you were made in the image of God? Did you take that from Genesis chapter 2? But I don't believe nothing else there. Everything else was corrupted by man, and I'm God in and of myself. But I'll take Genesis chapter 2. Like, no, that's not how this works. You can't hate God and use his word. And so, but that is like I said, man, God, you on the spot. Johnny on the spot, and I forget these scriptures, or when I should be able to pull them right from my head. But where the scripture where it says that well, two scriptures. One, the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of men. And then I believe that's Romans somewhere, I think. But then there's another scripture where it says that in their foolish pride, in their foolish wisdom, I think that might be Romans 1. In their foolish pride and their foolish wisdom, their hearts became darkened against God. And they were willing to worship, in Romans 1, it's talking about worshiping the idols, the created things. But now, we may not worship the owl, or we may not worship the things, but now I worship myself. I'm God. I'm able to do these things. I can manifest this. I can do this, that, and third, because you think so much of yourself. Because your philosophy makes you think you don't need God. You have God within yourself. I can do this on my own. I don't need God. How foolish.
Yeah.
And it's always
evil.
been that way.
Sometimes it's even more blatant where they are citing Satan, by name. It says right here that there's a book by Mark Twain that he wrote, Letters from the Earth. It's one of the oddest pieces in literature ever written, actually. And I think it was in 1962 or something like that, that it was published again or something. And it's Mark Twain basically takes on the persona of Satan himself in that work. Wow. And supposedly recording over 30,000 blasphemy words in that written document, quoting archangels in there like Gabriel and Michael and stuff like that, letters from hell. And so that is one philosopher, Mark Twain, who actually was very charismatic in that book, that pretended to be like, I'm going to prophetically write something and call it literature because everybody's going to respect me because I'm Mark Twain. Right. And they're going to treat it not religiously, but they're going to treat it like literature. And it's like, no, that's not literature, bro. That's blasphemy. That's blasphemous. Yeah. Like over 30,000 blasphemies against the Lord, against his church. And you're pretending to write in the name of Satan. Yo, Mark Twain, get behind me, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like sometimes it's even more blatant than I'm going to worship myself. Sometimes it is. A lot of the times it is. I want to worship myself because I think I'm better. You know what I mean? Whatever. But a lot of the times it's when you read some of these guys' works, it's like they're literally writing on the behalf of Satan, yo.
Yeah.
And let me see. And if you're still not convinced that these people were, influenced by Christians, man, this is a great book. You guys, everybody should read it. It's called Apostate.
Man, check that out.
Yeah, Apostate. All right, so think about Western civilization and think about the name John. John. You know how many people named John?
Right.
A lot of people, bro. Thousands of people. King John, all the way to like nowadays, your neighbor John. Right? John Deere.
Right.
Where do you think that name come from, bro? Like who made it popular in civilization, bro? I'm talking about civilization. Who made the name John popular? I say it has to be John the Apostle.
Okay. Yeah.
And John the Baptist in the Bible. It has to be John the Baptist in the Bible and John the Apostle. After that, people started naming their kids John after John the Apostle and John the Baptist. And that trend never went away. Never went away, bro. Think about the most popular men named John after John the Apostle. John the Apostle and John the Baptist. Ready? John Locke, John Jacques Rousseau, John Stuart Mill, John Paul Stewart, John Dewey, John Lennon, John Steinbeck, and many other people named John. John Elway.
Yeah.
John, name after disciples of Jesus, followers of Jesus, right?
Right.
So, and a lot of those people I mentioned are like John Jacques Rousseau, rejected Christianity. One of the fathers of the French Revolution, that hated Christians and stuff like that. John Lennon, he said, "I'm more popular than Jesus, and Jesus ain't popular anymore." So all these people.
One of them Beatles called Jesus homosexual, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So many years ago, and I quote, page 1. It starts off with a banger. Many years ago, the West had a rich Christian heritage. That is why many parents named their son John. Between 400 AD and 1400 AD, the Christian gospel penetrated the Western world. But after the 15th century, another religion or faith committed, called humanism, worked its way into the consciousness of the West. It was highly organized, complete with sacraments, institutions, buildings, ethical systems, social theories, and cultural denominations, whatever. To this day, the early Christian influence is recognizable. Christianity has made an incredible impact on language arts, um, architecture, music, education, hospital, etc. All these things. Um, so he's basically saying there's two different cultures, and the reason why Christianity penetrated the West is because it replaced all those institutions. It
Right.
replaced all the philosophies of body mutilation, tattoos, cannibalism, pagan practices, homosexuality. All those things were like absent
Right.
when Christians dominated every institution of the world. Now it's like they're making the comeback.
Yeah, it's a decline. Yeah.
It's a making comeback. So why do you think changed everything? What made it change? Why the break?
Man, that's
No
a good
pressure.
question. Yeah, man. You said no pressure, then you put the pressure on me. But nah, man, I like, but uh, I think as it was before, it's so being again that the decline in the belief system over here, the decline in the reverence of God, all the declines Godward are due to the incline of self theology. You know, like everything is about me. Remember, the Bible even said that in the last days, men will be lovers of who?
Self.
Themselves.
Yeah.
That everything is about me. So we are in, what do they call this? What's this generation? The what? The me generation.
Me.
Everything is about me. So then I can't care about God because I don't care about you. I don't care about anything else. So then the only thing that matters is who? Me. And so then obviously the love for God, the understanding of God, theology, the wisdom of God, sacred wisdom, reverence of God, the fear of God, all of that is in decline because me is first. We might we might still be printing it on the money that in God we trust, but we have long since abandoned that truth.
I would like to say which God? Which God,
yeah,
by the way?
Yeah, which God?
Which
yeah,
God is first?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put it like this: take the capital G off, and that line could still be true.
Yeah.
But just take the capital G away because it ain't the God of the Bible.
Right.
It's not the one true and living God. And there are people who are more willing to accept thousands of gods. I believe that there are thousands and hundreds and thousands of gods than to say there is one God. Because if you say there is one God, then somebody's got to be wrong.
Mm.
And because I don't want to hurt no feelings, and because I don't want to step on no toes, and because I don't worship that one God that you're talking about, then it can't be him. I'll accept them all. Whatever makes me, and again, at the end of the day, it comes back down to me. Whatever makes me feel good, whatever makes me satisfied, whatever makes me happy.
I like this quote here. He says in the first chapter, page 13, he says, quote, "Culture is religion externalized. So a loss of Christian faith means a loss of Christian culture. People always live out their fundamental beliefs." End quote. So basically piggybacking on what you said, what he's saying is basically is what you're saying. What people believe is what they're going to practice. And that will ooze and spill into culture, society, whatever you want to say it, your city, your neighborhood. You know what I mean? And you want to you want to know why they're like robbing, looting, Israel's like bombing everybody right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you want to know why everybody's going crazy? It's because they're practicing what they believe.
Yeah.
People are looting, taking over streets and calling it no police zones and taking over cities, and hundreds and thousands of people are like invading like the country to the southern border, and like people shooting each other, drive-bys. People go on drive-bys and shoot each other because they don't care for the other person.
Right.
They hate. You know what I mean? They hate. They're like, I hate this person, so I'm gonna go shoot them, right? So that's why there's drive-bys. Every weekend in Philadelphia and Chicago, people hate the police and hate government. That's why they take over. What couple years ago in Atlanta and Seattle and all these places, they're practicing what they believe. So what you see right now on Twitter and Western civilization in general is you're seeing people believing and practicing it on what they believe out loud. And Christians, sadly, are not practicing their beliefs out loud. Loud enough.
Right.
Well,
let me ask you this. What are they practicing? What not the Christians, but the world. What are they practicing? One word.
Not Christianity.
Lawlessness. That's what we've seen. Lawlessness. They are living by no law at all. They are doing whatever they want. They're doing whatever my wicked heart inspires me to do. So a heart that is not regenerated and made new by the Holy Spirit, they still have that heart of stone. They have not yet, I'll say yet because I don't know what God will do, but they have not yet received the heart of flesh, regenerated by the Holy Spirit. So they're living with that heart of stone, and that heart of stone cares about nothing, and it cares about no God, and it fears nothing, and it fears no God, and it fears no one. And so then I do what I want to do. And so that's why you see the decline in morality and the decline in or the incline in violence and all of this stuff in the cities and all over the world. Why? Because they've taken God out of everything. They've literally taken God out of their hearts. Now, mind you, remember Romans 1 says this too. They know what's true. They know what's right. They know the difference between right and wrong. And what they do is they take that truth and they suppress it in their unrighteousness. Their wickedness has now taken over them, and they live solely to satisfy their wicked pleasure.
It's a curse, bro. It's a curse of Romans chapter 1. It seems like I think we're already there where God is just giving up. Yep. Not giving up on humanity, but like giving these people up and saying, okay, you want this? Go ahead, have at it. And like what happens, the results of that is insanity. The results of that is like a total depravity that's like manifesting itself in a way where institutions, you could have the best document, bro. You could have the Westminster Confession right there in front of everybody could see it. And that in itself will not save mankind. You could have like the Constitution, travel to every city in the United States for everybody to see it. And that still wouldn't save the United States, from this lawlessness, from this depravity and disorder, this dysfunction, right? Yes. It wouldn't save it. Like you could have the best of the best, like go around the United States to like try to encourage everybody and bring everybody together. That would not save the United States or the Western world from its lawlessness, because what makes a lawlessness person obey the law? What makes a bank robber obey a police officer? What makes it? A Holy Spirit from God to regenerate the person, right? Yes, that's the only thing. That's the only reason why a bank robber would obey the police officer. You know what I mean? The bank robbers don't go out looking for police. Like, hey, what's up, man? Like, you're my best friend. They don't do that. They run
Right.
away from the police. They rob banks at night, so no one can see them, especially the police. So all these people who are breaking the law, they don't want to be seen. They don't want the law. So back to your question, who will be God? Right? Who
Yeah.
will be God? It's a battle between God and man. The question of whether man will be God or whether God will be God. Mm.
That's
It's
it.
like it's like the question of in the Old Testament. Remember, Elisha went over there and he said, "Oh, if your God is God, then we're going to worship Him." And they
Right.
said, "If Israel's God is God, then you all need to repent and come back and worship Him."
Right.
Right? It's like we're back to like we need that moment again where we need the church through preaching of the word to the ordinary sacraments
Yeah.
of baptism and the Lord's Supper, to the ordinary means of grace, all these things through the church, through the pulpits to preach to all Western civilization again and
Yeah.
said,
Oh, yeah.
who is going to be God?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, sir.
It's a battle.
I agree.
It's a battle for truth. It's a battle for metaphysics, a battle for ethics. It's a worldview in conflict.
And,
Polit-
oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, no, go
No, I
ahead.
just I just wanted to say this one thing. There is still hope, and you know why? I think about the prophet. He ran away. I think he was running away from Jezebel and Ahab, I believe, if I'm
Mhm.
remembering this one correct. He's running away, and he says, Lord, I don't know why I got to deal with this stuff. Like I got to be the only one left that's still,
Mm.
preaching the truth. I got to be the only one left that's standing for you. And God told him, well, sit down, because there's still 7,000 knees that have not bowed to Baal.
And
Right?
7,000 is a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely. So then when I sat down and I thought about it, I was working one day, and I just feel like God showed it to me this way. I was at work one day, and mind you, I'm a pastor working. I was working as an EMT, so I'm in and out of hospitals. I'm in and out of places, picking up patients, and I'm using that opportunity when I get patients on a truck to talk to them about Jesus and witness to them while I'm taking them, to their destinations or wherever. So I take that time, and anybody who's ever worked with me, they know that you stay around Jacob long enough, he's gonna talk about Jesus. So if you don't want to hear about Jesus, leave Jake alone, because Jake gonna talk about Jesus. So then, and I try not to be overbearing with it, but if ever I got an opportunity, trust me, I was gonna take it, and I was gonna run up in it. But as I was going places, God would show me. Like, I got a sister-in-law, like my brothers, and all of us are in the medical field. And so I go to the hospital to pick up a patient. I go pick up the patient, and somebody tapped me on my shoulder and say, "Hey, bro." I turn around, it's my sister-in-law. And I give her a hug. I didn't know you was working in here. And she was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, okay, there's one here. And different places I would go, and I would talk about Jesus, and there would be someone else there that was saying, "Listen to him. Listen to me." Everywhere I go, God had somebody there, in the doctor's offices, in the nursing homes, in the different places, the hospitals I would go. There will always be somebody there that knew the truth. And I pray that in some way I inspired those people when I went in here to get on it, talk to these people about Jesus, because it matters. It matters. But what God showed me is you are not the only one. God still, there are, like you said, symbolically 7,000. There are still many people in the government, many people in different walks, like the police, the different people, different places that God has strategically put them there to stand for him, and he has not let it go. He ain't lost nothing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. And that thing, even now, it makes me cry, because I think about it like, God, even when I'm thinking like, man, I'm out here by myself. No, you may be by yourself in that specific spot, but you might light the fire under somebody else to get them going. It doesn't
Mm.
matter where you are, just do your job, and you gotta handle the rest.
Amen.
Gotta handle the rest.
Amen. It even if you like, right, we always feel like when we fight for truth, we always feel like, man, we're alone, right? Like sometimes you look around, you're like, man, and that's always, like it always feels the truth. At least for me, whenever I've been in situations like that, like you look in church history, a lot of those people felt alone, like Elisha, Athanasius, Jonathan Edwards at one time, he felt
Yeah.
alone, like, man. And Jonathan Edwards said, even if no one else would stand for God, I need to resolve that I will stand for him,
Oh yeah.
even if I do it alone. Like, we have to have that mentality. Like, yes, God is going to be there. God is sovereign. He will place his people. But even if no one stands up for God, we need to resolve that we will stand for him.
Oh yeah.
And God will be at Martin Luther, kind of being alone in the world, for a while.
Yeah. Here I stand.
Um, and he's like, here I stand. God help me, you know what I mean? Standing in front of the powers that be. There's many people in church history from the time of Elijah to the modern day, where people feel like, man, I'm standing up for truth. But real quick, I wanted to get your list of people that you wrote down who were the most influential in a very negative way in the world since 1882. And the reason why I chose 1882, because my person who was the most influential, I think he died in 1882,
Okay.
and ever since then, he has the most lasting, most influential, most all-encompassing. He rules the world from beyond the grave still.
Okay.
So, but before I pull him out, let's go ahead and hear your list.
Okay. So I'm gonna do the negative list first.
Yeah, go ahead and do the negative list.
Okay. So first one, this guy, he was born in 1852. His name was Charles Taze Russell. He is. Do you want me to tell a little bit about him or just
Yeah,
name him?
just go ahead and give me a highlight.
Okay. All right. So basically, Charles Taze Russell is the reason why we have Jehovah's Witnesses. He's the one
Yes.
who started that,
Wow.
and basically taking a dream that a snake talked to him and told him all of these things, and then he basically took that and made a whole religion out of it, and we still fighting that thing today. And
Yo.
and that was one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick.
A snake, huh?
Yeah, that was one of the things I want to talk about. Was that when I was talking about my journey into this, there was a person I was working with, and that person asked me, and again in my years ago, or right after my father had died, and they said, do you believe God can die? And I said, no, God can't die. He said, because God is a spirit, right? He's eternal. I said, yeah, that's right. He said, but you believe Jesus, God. And I said, yeah. And that thing, it messed me up. But that is what sent me, that's where I found, Reformed theology. That's how I ended up finding it, because I was like, well, if Jesus is God, how did he die? Because I didn't understand. I grew up knowing, God is well, the way we used to say it was God is 3 in 1. And so now I would understand that to be modalism. But coming up, we didn't have that teaching where we understood these things. We were taught the best that these men knew how to teach. And I do not believe, that's why I'm very careful how we give out heretical and all that stuff, because some people only teach as they, the best, they teach the best they know. And their heart may be in the right place, but they might just be in error or at least misunderstanding on this point, but they're not knowingly saying the wrong thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that led me to a better understanding. That's when I found, I think it was R.C. Sproul, and he started explaining the Trinity to me. Obviously not personally, like I talked to this man, but I'm watching these videos and he explaining the Trinity to me, and then and that's when I knew I was saved. And you couldn't take it from me. But Charles Taze Russell, that man, and we got 3 or more million plus Jehovah's Witnesses all around the world.
And they're all over the world. They're in Brazil, they're in Argentina, they're in Russia.
Yeah.
They're in Afghanistan. When the United States left Afghanistan, one of the first organizations was Jehovah's Witnesses, which is what?
Yeah.
They're on it. We got to stay on top of it. We got to preach the gospel, man. Go out there, tell your neighbors, say, hey, this is the real gospel. Like, hey, I saw those guys knocking on your door real quick. I wanted to come back and here's a video, right, from RC Sproul, Ligonier, whatever. Check this out. Actually, this is better. Like, go save your neighbor from that door knock, bro.
Right. Right.
All right. Who else you got in next?
Next is Oral Roberts.
Okay. Who's that?
Oral Roberts. He was born in 1918. He died in 2009. And he's practically the father of word faith theology. So your Benny Hinn, your Creflo Dollars, your Mike Todds, your Tim Rosses, and all of these other guys that do the word faith type deal. All of these guys,
naming and claiming and all that.
Yeah, from him and Oral Roberts and Kenneth Hagin, they were like the pioneers of the name it, claim it.
Another bad evil world philosophy that impact the church. Who else you got?
All right. So from there, I got David Koresh. David Koresh. He was born in 1959. He died in 93. You might remember him as the wacko from Waco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe he was. He definitely is or was a fulfillment of the apostolic writings and of Jesus' teachings that in the last days there would come false prophets and false messiahs and all of that. He was one of those, and he ended up getting about I think it was over 70 people he had got killed.
He drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Or something. No, not
okay. So basically, he was the leader of the Branch Davidians, which was a sect of the Seventh-day Adventists. So it was an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventists, and he had these weird things. He thought he was the Messiah. He came to the revelation that he was the Messiah.
From Texas.
Yeah. And he confused all these people and got all these people up following him. And so as they were following him, he was taking the married couples, he was taking the wives from them and making them swear that they would only lay with him, and the husbands had to practice celibacy. And then he got all these people to die for him for his cause because he said this was their only way to get to heaven. So out of this, at least 24 children were killed in this thing. Because like the whole
good riddance. Hopefully that's. So who else you got?
Albert Pike.
30 Masonry or Mason or something like that. Yes.
Yeah. He was born in 1809. He died in 1891, and he was the sovereign grand commander of the Supreme Council Scottish Rite, a branch of Freemasons, and he was also one of the top dogs of the KKK. So he ain't like black people. He ain't like Indian. He ain't like nobody. He ain't like nobody that wasn't his skin color. And so
what's wrong with you people?
There you go. And he was a Luciferian. He believed Lucifer to be, in his words, he believed Lucifer was the spirit of light, and that true Masonic commitment would lead one away from believing in God. And not only that, it would lead one away from believing in God. It would lead one away from atheism, and it would lead one away from Christianity altogether. So,
yeah. Who else you got?
Okay. All right. So on my positive side, this man is still alive. That was John MacArthur, and he was born in 1939. And I think that goes without saying. We ain't got to go do a big thing on John MacArthur, but I believe this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't be here as a pastor without God's gift through John MacArthur. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to make sure I say it right. Yeah. I'm not giving John MacArthur the credit that goes to God, but John MacArthur was used by God and has been a blessing to me. And
Absolutely. He's been like consistent in his teaching for like 50 years and what he did in LA,
yeah,
which is a very, bad city in on many ways. There's a lot of good. There's some good, but it's just there's a lot of bad politically, all that stuff. And for him to build a ministry for 50 years in a city like LA, in a state like California, to go against the state a couple years ago, get charged $1,000 a day and win the
yeah,
court case. Uh, you have to tip your hat off to John MacArthur. You know what I mean? As the
yeah.
minister, who else you got?
I got Charles Stanley.
Okay,
Charles Stanley. He was born in 1932, died earlier this year, and he was the pastor of First Baptist Church in Atlanta for 49 years, and he also he was the head or the founder of In Touch Ministries since 1982. So he started that in 1982, and Charles Stanley, at least in my opinion, was a very, very solid biblical teacher, and
absolutely.
I mean very helpful, very practical, very plain and down to earth. Like I wouldn't agree with every single thing he said, but man, he was just a good sound Bible preacher. I don't know what happened to his son, but
His son fell.
yeah.
Yeah. Who else you got?
All right. I got A.W. Tozer.
Awesome.
A.W. Tozer. So he was born in 1897. He died in 1963. And one of his books that really impacted my life was The Pursuit of Holiness.
Yeah.
Man, when like I said, for you probably could have got through that book in no time. It wasn't a big book, but for me, it was like so much theology packed into it that it's like almost like I'm trying to cram it in my head as I'm reading. It took me a while to get through it, but when I read it, I was all the more better for it. And then to come and find out that he had not had any theological training. He had not had no high school nor college.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That what was in this man was just God's work, and it was beautiful to read the things he wrote about God. And I don't know the man personally or nothing, so I can't vouch for I don't know his whole story or whatever. But as far as all that I've read, a godly man.
Who else you got?
And the last one was a person that you may not know, and many of y'all may not know, but it is he was very, very influential to me, and his name was Carl Frett. That was my dad. He's the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing today. I'm able to do what I do today. The church we have today is the members that came up under him, and I'm just continuing on what he did. He held us down. He got us to this point through the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is continuing to do his work today through me. So,
Amen, bro. Yes, good stuff, bro. I say my negative list since 1882, I will have to put there's only one king since 1882 when it comes to the men who basically raised their fist against Jesus. Obviously it's Lucifer, but through in man, in the flesh, I would have to say who changed the world against Jesus. That still is credited for that today. I would have to say is Charles Darwin. Because
okay, yeah.
Charles Darwin came from an Anglican background. He knew the Reformers. He knew the Christian perspectives. He knew everything about the Reformation. He was a smart man, going to universities, speaking, you know what I mean? Traveling the world a couple times. He basically, with his independent study, changed the world in a very negative way against Jesus, against his church. And since 1882, when he died, he has changed the world, I would say, more than the Beatles, more than Madonna, more than Tupac, more than John F. Kennedy, more than, the Great New Deal of the 20s, more than the Yankees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's people in South Africa that don't even care about the Yankees, but
Right.
there's scientists in South Africa that are hardcore evolutionists.
Right. Right.
You get it?
Yes, sir.
So that's what I mean by Charles Darwin continues to change the world against Jesus since the day he died.
Right.
Coming up with the concept and laying the foundation for eugenics,
Mhm.
ethical science, evolution. Him and his
Mhm.
brother or something, his cousin has a big old thing. He's not. He wasn't like a hardcore atheist, but he was almost there.
Right.
He was more of a natural selectionist. That's a whole nother theory. So all his theories, I could just name a dozen of them, and you would say, "Yup, yup, oh yeah, 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 yeah." And it's like Charles Darwin gets thrown around a lot in Christianity today. Everybody talks about him, Charles Darwin, and it's like it's a cliche. He's the Madonna of Christianity. I get it,
Right.
but people don't really understand. Yo, slow down. You're talking about one of the satanic apostles, bro. Like this guy changed the world since 1882. Do you realize what he did to science? What he did to worldview? Wait, yeah. If you kids go to public education, they know more about Darwinism than they know about Jesus and the apostles.
Right. Right.
So, and that's not because they treat Darwinism as the dawn light of humanity.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everything
Yes, sir.
before Darwin was like in darkness.
Right. Right.
You talk to a scientist, it's like, oh yeah, when Darwin came along, he changed the world. He brought light to humanity. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
That,
really?
that
Oh,
same that
really?
same light Albert Pike was talking about.
Yeah, what kind of light you talking about, bro?
Yeah.
Satanic light, bro.
Yeah.
He brought about that satanic light. And I would say he tops the list for me. He tops the list even more so than Nietzsche. I would say he tops the list in my book more than Shakespeare, more than Mark Twain, Ernest Hemingway. Don't get me wrong. Ernest Hemingway wrote a lot of things against God. Mark Twain, they all have their contributions.
Right.
They're all on my list. But I would say on top of that list, it would have to be Charles Darwin.
I
And I
agree.
would say we need to go back to that. And evolution has not been, it has been debunked.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of brilliant Christian scientists who are in love with science and biology, and they're faithful Christians that have proven evolution wrong.
Right.
And I think that's great. We need to do more of that. But theologically, we need to come back and plant our flag
Yeah.
like a little bit more harder again, because until evolution dies, until natural selection dies, until eugenics dies,
Yeah.
from LA all the way to South Africa, from Russia, from all over the world, until evolutionary theory dies, we have not won the battle for truth yet.
Right. Right. That's right.
You know what I mean? We have not done a great job, and I know we have done a good work. Don't get me wrong, we have done a good work, but we have not done a good job in killing it, because you could go to Africa and still find it, and it's like,
Right.
well, we haven't done a good job. We haven't done a great job. So that's my list to make it short. Um, any closing thoughts before we close up, bro?
Man, for one, I just like to say I appreciate you having me. I actually enjoyed this. I didn't know how this was going to work out, but it went beautiful. Like I enjoyed myself, and I pray that the audience enjoyed it as well. I just say, man, thank you, man. Keep doing what you do. Man, I want to say this as a in honor to you, brother. You are brilliant. You are brilliant. Like I've literally sat here like, Lord, you are teaching me philosophy right here on camera in front of everybody for an hour and a
I
half.
appreciate it, bro.
No, I straight up I appreciate that. Like, thank you, man. Like these things, it might don't mean nothing to nobody else, but it mean a lot to me that God takes time out, even when I ain't even thinking about it. And God took time out to show me where He's brought my mind and how He's taught me things, and then also show me new things through you. I appreciate that.
But you taught me a lot too, man. Like there's a lot to learn from you too. Your ministry, your passion for the Lord, your sensitivity to God's heart. That's the best, sweetest spot to be in. You know
I'm
what I
trying.
mean?
Yes.
People could have the biggest YouTube channel and all this and not have that, then they completely miss the boat. You know what I
Right. Right.
mean? So I think there should be more pastors out there like you who are sensitive to God's heart, passionate about his calling, keeping low to the ground, being humble. That's good work, bro. So keep it up. Let me return the favor to you too. And
Yes,
you know
sir.
what I mean? And the Bible says, outdo one another in love and honor towards your brother. So let me outdo you one by telling you, you need to keep up the good work, bro, and
Yes, sir.
continue the hard work of building up his church in a tiny little corner in North Carolina. I know no one's. You feel like you're alone. You probably feel like no one cares. No one's probably supporting you. But there's more support for you than you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I root for you. Me and my family are gonna start praying for your church plant,
I
that it
appreciate
is successful and that it grows, and people in North Carolina would hear about it, man. So I appreciate your support. Thank you for your kind words. And let me go ahead and see if there's any comments here. Cozy C says this was awesome. Thank you so much, Cozy. Thank you so much. Daryl, thank you so much. Jason is in the building. Dear World Christian.
it. What's up, Jason?
Regina. Let me see.
Oh, Jarena. Hey,
DK.
Jarena.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much for stopping by, everybody. Once again, stop by my chicanonox.com. Check out my blog. Don't forget to please subscribe to the channel and your channel as well. Subscribe to both of our channels. Don't forget, there's big ministries out there, but don't forget about the small ministries like ours. We are
Yes,
small
sir.
ministries. We're not backed up by huge amounts of people that, you know what I mean? We're out here doing some honest work practically for free. And don't forget to hit that like, subscribe on all our channels here. And let me see. I am going to Egypt. Let me end it with this. I'm going to Egypt on a missionary trip, and I need your donation. I need your help. I'm going to be talking to pastors who are in Egypt, Christian leaders, teaching them the Reform faith. I won't be teaching because I'm not a teacher, but I will be down there assisting the teachers. And I'm going to be doing a live broadcast, interviewing these guys if possible. Let me go ahead and show you the page where you could go ahead and hit the QR code to donate. Like anything else, I'm talking about like $5, $10, anything you want to give me, to send me to Egypt, to go ahead and put in those 12-hour days for 12 days next year, your $5, your $2, whatever you want to give. Well, I'm going to use that and make that go a long way. Trust me. You know what I mean? So I'm praying. So pray for me. Next year, I'm going to Egypt, and I'm going behind enemy lines. Don't forget, Egypt, for those who don't know, Egypt is 95% Muslim. That
Yes.
means, like,
Yes.
according to some reports, there's only 5% Christians in the population here. But it's the second, think about this in a positive way. It's the second large, Christianity is the second largest religion. That's what that means. You know what I
Yes, sir.
mean? That's what that means. There's a lot of ups. There's more ups than downs right now in Egypt. Politically, Christianity is getting a lot of tolerance in Egypt. Politically, Christianity is growing. You know what I mean? So that 5% is actually old data. You know what I mean? So there could be more. And I'm going to meet with these Christian giants who are out there with their humble little churches out in the ancient sands of Egypt. What an honor it's going to be for me. This is like going to the Super Bowl for me. Like, I'm going to be talking to these Christian pastors. You know what I mean? Like, I love talking to Christian pastors. Imagine talking to Christian pastors in Egypt, getting their feedback on how do you get joy, living in a third world country. How do you get joy when you don't have any money and yet you're doing pastoralship? How do you get joy by studying theology in the middle of nowhere, leading your family in family worship? Like, I want to know that, right?
Right.
I'm just letting you know some of my stuff that hopefully I get to ask. And trust me, when I ask those things and when I get those questions, those answers, I'm gonna come back on here and share them with you. But I cannot do that if you don't help me. So please go ahead, get your phone, scan it, donate $5 to $10, whatever you can. Share this link. Share. It's on my. I'll drop the link right here. It's on the comics comment section right here. It's on GoFundMe. I started an account, GoFundMe. Copy this link. Boom. You could donate anonymously if you don't want no one to know who you are. You know what I mean? No shame in the game. If you want to donate $5, it's okay. Any little bit help, and I appreciate those people who donated already. So with that being said, yeah, go ahead, bro.
No, I was just gonna ask you, can you send me that link in the inbox, in the messenger, and my church will donate some. We ain't got much, but we'll donate some. Absolutely.
I appreciate you, bro. Yeah, I'll go ahead and send you some information. I got a couple churches that I want to approach as well. So I'm not going by myself. Let me clarify. I'm not a renegade. I'm accountable to elders. I'm going along with one seminary professor and then my older elder in my other church. They go to Egypt, so they invited me because they want me to become like a missionary teacher.
Okay.
And they say, you need to come on here to see if this is really your calling, right? And I was like, you know what? That's a good thing, because what if it is my calling? What if it's not? I don't know. So this is like this could be a springboard to something personally, right?
Right.
And this could change my life. You know what I mean? Stuff like this could change my life. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, sir.
There's danger here too. You know what I mean? There's like martyrdom is a real thing there. So it's not a vacation trip. It's not a cruise line, whatever. It's 12-hour days for 12 days, zero pay.
Right.
So appreciate any support. Anybody
Absolutely.
who could give me anything, I'll send you guys the information. But until then, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for hanging out with us. Pastor Jay, I'd love to have you on next time, talk about something else.
Yes, sir.
Until then, God bless, man.
God bless you.
Great